call on member states and the international community by extension to acknowledge the importance of Resolution 74/274 adopted by the United Nations General Assembly, which calls for the strengthening of supply chains that promote and ensure universal, fair, inclusive, transparent, equitable, efficient, and timely access to medicines, vaccines, and other health supplies in order to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Dominica firmly supports the view that vaccines are a public good and that no one is safe until everyone is safe. Excellencies, the science has proven that vaccines are an important way out of this pandemic, and a coordinated response to COVID-19 is not possible without an open and supportive multilateral system. I wish to thank the World Health Organization, the Pan American Health Organization, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, and all our other bilateral partners for their continued support in our effort at preventing, detecting, and responding to this pandemic. And we are particularly appreciative of the leadership of PAHO and its provision of vaccines, technical support, medical equipment, and supplies under the COVAX mechanism. Mr. President, Dominica would like to place on record our deepest gratitude to the government of India for allowing us to be among the first of developing countries to begin the vaccination of our citizens. We also express our gratitude to the government of the Republic of Cuba and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela for allowing its medical brigade to complement the services of our healthcare workers who have been stretched to capacity, and to the government of Venezuela for supplying PPEs and test kits as part of our response. The government of the People's Republic of China continues to be a true friend to Dominica by being one of the first countries to our aid with the supply of masks, other personal protective equipment, ventilators, testing, and other diagnostic supplies, especially during the early days of the pandemic when these were extremely scarce. Mr. President, to survive this pandemic and to better prepare for the future, priority must therefore be given to universal access to quality healthcare services to all citizens. This will require a greater role for the World Health Organization and its hemispheric counterparts, such as PAHO, CARPHA, among others. For small island developing states like Dominica, the COVID-19 pandemic threatens to reverse the gains that we have made in the socio-economic development of our people by placing additional burdens on national budgets, as our governments are forced to provide increased support to our citizens. Excellencies, the closure of businesses and the additional cost of operating businesses during the restrictions occasioned by the actions to contain the virus is having an extremely debilitating impact on the private sector. Our tourism industries have been dealt a devastating blow, as the impact has been most severe in the hotel, hospitality, and service sectors. We must therefore work collectively to end this deadly pandemic. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, living with the COVID-19 pandemic and preparing for future pandemics must now become essential components of sustainable development. Developing countries like Dominica are at risk of not being able to meet our sustainable development goals if this pandemic continues to severely impact our people and countries. Thus, our international development partners, both bilateral and multilateral, must be more responsive and supportive of more creative financial instruments that take into account these new realities. Dominica is of the view that this new dispensation must also reward countries for progressive policies directing at creating sustainable systems for production and consumption. Universal access to quality health care must now be pursued more aggressively, whilst at the same time access to quality and relevant education must continue if small states are to build capacity and advance their national sustainable development agendas. Mr. President, rising sea levels coupled with more frequent and extreme weather events make the Caribbean one of the most vulnerable regions in the world. Recent weather phenomena suggest that the climate is indeed changing, with increases in temperature, changes in the seasons, and erratic temperature variations. Fellow delegates, according to the World Bank study entitled Turn Down the Heat, the number of severe hurricanes is projected to increase by 40%, with double the intensity as warming rises by 2 degrees Celsius, and up to 80% in case of a 4 degrees Celsius warming. A single disaster event can affect an entire territory or economy and cause a disproportionately high loss of GDP, as was the case with Hurricane Maria, which affected all economic and social sectors in Dominica, with an estimated impact of 226% of GDP. Distinguished delegates, Dominica continues to call on the major polluters to take more aggressive actions to reduce global warming, as our planet will not be able to sustain life as we know it if they continue to pursue their unsustainable systems of production and consumption unabated. Dominica is working on becoming the world's first climate-resilient nation, and we are committed to doing more than just adapt to the impact of climate change. But these major polluters must take up their responsibilities to support small island developing nations like ours to achieve these goals. We would like to thank our international partners who have helped to create CREAD, Climate Resilient Execution Agency of Dominica, to coordinate donor-funded climate-resilient projects as we mainstream resilience across sectors. Mr. President, recently, the government of Dominica approved a comprehensive national resilience development strategy and the development of Dominica's Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan, CRRP, which further underscores government's commitment towards disaster risk reduction, resilience building at all levels, and the development of sound response and recovery mechanisms. Dominica looks forward to the renewal of discussions at COP26 in a few weeks' time, where commitments made under the Paris Agreement can be revisited and honored, especially as it relates to climate financing. This is a matter of climate justice. Dominica and other seeds are not responsible for the warming of our planet, but we are disproportionately impacted by the effect of climate change. Mr. President, one of the major contributors to climate change is the consumption of fossil fuel for the production of electricity and transportation. The importation of fossil fuel has over the years had the greatest impact on the economic vulnerability of many small island developing states. The transition of the energy sector away from fossil fuels, therefore, is central to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, building resilience to economic and climate-related events, and ultimately pursuing a sustainable development pathway. Mr. President, the Commonwealth of Dominica continues to pursue the development of its geothermal resources, as this will allow us to move away from the importation of fossil fuel for the generation of electricity within the next 5 years, while also reducing the cost of electricity to our people. The development of geothermal energy also has had the potential to sustain clean mobility and to create a new industrial revolution powered by a cleaner and more affordable energy. To date, our efforts to develop our country's geothermal potential have been supported by several partners: the United Kingdom, the World Bank, SIDSDOC, the Caribbean Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the European Commission, the Government of New Zealand, the Clinton Climate Initiative, and the United Arab Emirates, and we would like to thank them all. Mr. President, the plight of our brothers and sisters in the Republic of Haiti continues, much to the concern of Dominica and the rest of the Caribbean community. Over the last decade, Haiti has struggled with rising poverty levels, sustained political instability, and numerous disasters, resulting in extreme hardship for citizens of this sister Caribbean nation. Haiti is currently in the top 10 countries experiencing a food crisis. The United Nations must therefore take leadership in coordinating targeted support to the Haitian government for the benefit of the Haitian people. Excellencies, our Caribbean region also continues to call for the discontinuation of the economic, financial, and trade embargo on our brothers and sisters in the Republic of Cuba. Notwithstanding this decades-old embargo, the Republic of Cuba continues to make a positive impact on our region and the wider world, and we renew our call on the government of the United States to allow the people of Cuba to be fully integrated into the global trading system, to improve their lives, and to allow the world to continue to benefit from their tremendous contributions, especially in science and technology. Mr. President, Dominica is convinced that as a collective, we have the ability to solve all of the challenges which confront us. The extreme pace of human advancement in the 21st century has demonstrated that we have the political will and capacity to combat climate change and to develop means of production and consumption to sustain humanity, while at the same time protecting our planet. We must all recommit to playing our part to save our planet and to improve the lives of citizens worldwide, those who suffer from hunger and starvation, and others who continue to be marginalized will be pointless without peace and security. The destruction brought about by wars within and between countries continue to displace millions of people from their homes, creating unprecedented refugee crisis. Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the United Nations is a critical player in maintaining world peace and security, and Dominica remains committed to collaborating with the United Nations and all its agencies, as well as member states, to strengthen the mission of this noble institution. We commend the leadership of the Secretary General in this regard, and we reaffirm our confidence in the UN system as the ultimate negotiating and deliberating body for addressing major challenges confronting the world. Mr. President, history will record both our actions and inactions that can result in educating and saving our generation from this pandemic and from global warming and climate change, thus ensuring a safer planet for our children and future generations. I thank you.
Watching live these statements of the Minister for Foreign Affairs, International Business and Diaspora Relations of Dominica, Kenneth, Darroux, as part of the high-level debate of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. The Foreign Minister referred to the challenges faced by small developing states in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and the global economic crisis. As part of these challenges, he also highlighted the devastating effects of climate change on small island nations, which are disproportionately impacted by global warming, despite having a minimal responsibility for it. The Foreign Minister also expressed gratitude to Dominica's international partners for their support for the Caribbean nation's development efforts. He called for further international support to address the challenges that lay ahead, including building a sustainable and green model of development. We're now going live to the address of the statement of the representative of Morocco.
By His Excellency Nasser Bourita,